This year, we're celebrating 10 years since we first funded a planting project, and we'd love for you to celebrate that with us. So make sure you're signed up to our mailing list and you can keep up to date and get involved. Tree Sisters have had the pleasure of working deeply with the Fountain over the last few years. And if you aren't already aware, the Fountain is a US-based non-profit organization dedicated to supporting sacred economics, territories, and cultures, and advising and educating organizations and individuals based on original principles and ancestral wisdom. For Tree Sisters, the co-creation of Root and Ethics has completely changed our mindset as an organization and has totally shifted the way that we work. So we are so excited to share all of that with you today and tell you more. We'll be introducing the panelists and the framework shortly, but first I will hand to you, Suzi, to tell us more of the story.
Yeah, it's quite a lot just to realize that after all that time and all of the incredible contributions from so many different people and organizations, that it is now live on the website, and there are published documents co-authored by Mindahi and myself, but also so many different authors and contributors and contributions that have all shaped and held this work. So yeah, I think for a moment I'm always just wanting to sit in that and what it's like to be with you all today. For those who aren't in, Georgina's fabulous introduction helped into Tree Sisters and also maybe a little bit of a sense of the Fountain and their extraordinary work. Rooted in Ethics is a subtitled the Community Tree Growing Framework. Tree Stewardship Framework is a framework that includes nature pillars of nature relationships, ethical principles, and the practices guide has got a set of working practices. There are obviously loads of standards out there and ways of working in the world, and everybody has their own response to how to support landscapes. This one's really particularly focused on what it is to be supporting the inherent rights of nature, rights of communities, and how it is that we can be in our integrity and how we care for Earth's ecosystems and each other. And so it's got these pillars of nature relationships at the beginning that articulate those ways of those values of respecting the inherent rights of all beings. And then the ethical principles that come on from that are logical extensions, really, but also really embedded in various different inherent rights through existence, as well as legislative and legal rights that we see in international frameworks. All of these ethical principles also then lead into the working practices. And one of the things that's been so extraordinary about this process is that we've had input from such already highly acclaimed organizations, and then had the opportunity to have those approaches heard and reviewed by representatives of Aboriginal peoples and nations. And then Tree Sisters had to go integrating those in our restoration strategy and working with our extraordinary restoration partners, and then bringing that all back concisely, well, I say concisely, you could be the judge of that, but into the practices guide, which is done as a set of reflective questions so that people can explore, how it is that they're responding to some of these particular points of practical work with communities, with organizations, and also at a systemic level. So we're really looking at what supports systemic change in care for ecosystems, which is so critical at this point. I'd really love it, Georgina, if you went along to the next slide. Yeah, so I'm not going to go into detail in this call, though, it's going to be clear for anybody reading the documents, very happy to go into detail with relentless footnotes and lots of glossary references. But the key pillars of nature relationships we're expressing are in terms of relationships with ourselves and relationships with various beings of nature, including mountains and rivers. And those are receptive, reciprocal, and respectful. As I say, the ethical principles come from this. And if we switch over to the next slide, this will just give you a taste of just some of the named contributors to this framework. And at the bottom there, you see the participating organizations who were involved in the initial call for what is it that we can do that is greater than the sum of our parts in terms of caring for the earth, trees, and communities. So it's a real delight to be at this point now when we've got extraordinary case studies come forward from the planting partners to demonstrate that on the website. And also this bridge piece of what it is to relate conservation science and some of the extraordinary and passionate work that's done within academia, also to weaving into this deep listening with traditional ecological knowledge and the landscape protocols and biocultural protocols that are embedded in cultures. And so much of what this framework is about is really shining a light on how we can be funding and supporting the cultural relationship between trees and peoples, because it has very much been led by trees and our love of trees and relationship with peoples and communities and the different landscapes and incredible richness that comes from those things. So what we thought would be a really great way of embodying the listening process, because as I said, this has been a 5-year journey, and probably 2 or 3 of those has been sort of predominantly within the listening process, which has been facilitated so extraordinarily by the Fountain with the Mother Earth delegation of United Original Nations, is to invite you all into a listening process for this panel. And to do that, Luisah Teish has kindly said that she would open the space for us. So I'd love to hand over to Luisah.
Ashe. I always begin with Alafia, which is a greeting wherein I am asking that we have good health and be at peace with our neighbors. Wheresoever you find yourself, please feel your feet on the floor. Feel the earth beneath the floor. Feel the roots of the plants and the trees outside as they collaborate with each other on our behalf. We have been told by divination that the plant world knows what jeopardy the humans are in, and that they are meeting underground, discussing ways to help us. Let us give praise and thanks to the soil beneath our feet, for the grass, the bushes, the things that grow in the garden, and most especially for the trees who have the assignment to keep us breathing. Keep us breathing. Keep us breathing. For this, we give gratitude and pledge our work to support the trees as they keep us breathing. Keep us breathing. They keep us breathing. Ashe.
Thank you. That was really helpful for me, actually. And now we're welcoming in the rest of the incredible panel that is here with us today. So as they come in, here is the incredible panel. And I'm going to introduce you a little bit to make it so that people have got some sense of some of the background that all of these incredible people are bringing to this work. And anybody feel free to jump in, but I'm just going to quickly go through because I would really love to introduce Mindahi Bastida, Dr. Mindahi Bastida, who has joined us today from Mexico. He is from the Ultimi Toltec of Central Mexico. He's also the lead author for Rooted in Ethics on behalf of the Fountain and a representative of the Mother Earth delegation of United Original Nations. And together with Rebecca Lefton, we extensively, after a year or so of going over global topics of the most incredible, I could refraining from saying the word awesome relentlessly, then went into detail on editing the framework and really going, supporting us to understand some of the meaning behind words like ancestral wisdom and biocultural protocols. Anyway, Mindahi is joining us. It's a delight that he's here today. He's also a director of the Eagle and Condor Council, general coordinator of the Ultimi Toltec Regional Council of Mexico, and has been attending biodiversity COPs and climate COPs since 1982 and written extensively on subtopics that support understanding of the communities and ecosystems, and many other ways of speaking to that, which I'm sure he can bring in. We've also got, our introduction was with Luisah Teish of the Yoruba Nation, West Africa. She's also a representative of the Mother Earth Delegation of United Original Nations, as well as being a writer, performer of sacred myths and folklores with some incredible books to her name. In fact, actually, the keynote speaker, the work as an Oshun priestess, as well as having been the voice of Tree Sisters in an early animation that we did, which was one of the many different times that she's interacted with Tree Sisters to massively support the work. And we've also joined by Grandma Jyoti Ma, who's been the facilitator of the listening process and is an executive director and founder of The Fountain. She again is a representative of the Mother Earth Delegation of United Original Nations, and she's also the grandmother vision keeper for the Center of Sacred Studies. She's co-founded spiritual communities in America and Europe and helped with the International Council of 13 Indigenous Grandmothers and the Unity Concert. There's much more I could say to the incredible path that Jyoti has walked on and the many paths that it's united. But instead, I'm going to keep on shifting on and welcome Myra Jackson, who's joining us from Maryland. Have I got that right, Myra?
Yes.
Where she's the UN representative for the Earth Law Centre, a focal point for the UN Harmony with Nature programme, which is an extraordinary aspect of the UN, and an editorial advisor on Rooted in Ethics, which has been phenomenally helpful for us in fine-tuning of the understanding of inherent rights and legal aspects represented internationally. She's got the title of Diplomat of the Biosphere, awarded to her by the Stockholm Resilience Centre. And it's been fascinating to have the opportunity to speak with her and hear from her in her work spanning a global commons public policy affecting the wellness of people and the planet through establishing rights of nature through earth jurisprudence. Welcome, Myra. And last but not least at all, Angela Mayson, who's joining us from as head of restoration from Tree Sisters, and she's been committed to environmental restoration and regeneration for over 20 years, both in Aotearoa. Thank you. God, I knew I was going to say it wrong. Which we know of as also at New Zealand, but also now in the UK, and has worked worldwide across sectors, including business, government, and NGOs, and has advised as part of organisational boards. So it's a delight to have everyone with us today. And I'm just going to start by asking a simple question that we're not going, that you're all well aware of in advance, but what was your role in Rooted in Ethics, which I've already pointed to a bit, and what does this work mean for you, and why do you think it's important now? And I'd love to start with Mindahi, if that's all right.
Hatsi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity. Yes, this work is very meaningful in the sense that we are recovering ancestral wisdom and the intelligence that we need to protect life. So many concepts, categories that we use today are not supporting life systems. So this work is not just a guiding tool, but it's very critical to understand that we have the chance to recover what we call collective dignity as human beings. Because most of the time we look at nature as a thing to take over, not to take care. So in explaining this in the framework, we also need to understand that some categories are very disrespectful, damaging, not just to the consciousness, but to the natural world, the intangible and the tangible. For example, when we say about the trees and the water is meant to be in economics a resource. But the water is not a resource, the water is a sacred being, it's an element, sacred element. So the trees are also a family. The mountains, the sea, the sky. We are the reflection, and thanks to them, we are here in this world. So we need to go from commodification to really take care and give care to life systems. So this work has been very meaningful for me and for the world, because it brings up the ancestral wisdom so we can really go back to the path for the transcendence of human beings, just as another species, to come together. Balance with nature, but also with love and irresponsibility. Thank you.
Thank you. And I feel like when you bring forward the word responsibility, it's very meaningful to me. So thank you. Jyoti, is it possible to describe your role in this work and what this means to you?
Well, I would say, and thank you, Suzi, for asking this question. I would say that early on in the growth of our community globally, the mother gave us a very good teaching. She said, start with the seed of it all, and the seed of it all is about relations. You start there, everything else unfolds naturally. And I found that to be a truth over the years. And so it started with us building relations, Suzi, between your work with what TreeSisters was doing and what their mission had been given and they had been instructed in, and the fountain and what was unfolding from that teaching as that instrument came together through the growth and continued work of our Mother Earth delegation of United Original Nations and the work that they were doing, to the relations that brought us deeper and deeper through our listening process, to relations with the water, with the trees, with the soil, with all of creation and its different diversity of expression. And that brought us to those that the Mother Earth had opened to be the original caretakers to those communities. And that brought us into an understanding of original principle and mother law. And that is what then we were beginning to see. We had to start there. We had to restore that original foundation there first in order for everything to follow that original protocol and regenerate itself from that foundation on up. And wow, what a process it brought us into. We were pleasingly surprised, certainly challenged in our moments, but also I speak for myself, in awe of the timing of the mother's plan, because she has one and it's unfolding now, so that we can return to that original way of life, which holds all life as sacred. She is telling us that the work in restoring and protecting her sacred territories is essential to her own healing process. The mother sent out a message, Mother Earth sent out a message to the Kagaba Nation. Some of you might know them by the Kogi, called the Mother's Message, And if you haven't seen it, it's she's telling us what the next 2 years of a 13-year cleansing is about, and why we been brought through that cleansing so we would be ready for this deeper moment of choice that humanity is in, a choice like we've never had before. So we must wake ourselves and return to that original mother law, those original principles, and protect those territories and the original caretakers and their language, for they hold the way that Mother Earth in those original days gave to them to make sure that that territory, those sacred sites, that part of Mother Earth was cared for and could sustain itself and move forward in a field of reciprocity. All life is sacred. So thank you for walking this good road with us as we all woke and learned and grew. And I'm
Well, thank
thankful
you.
for all those that
Thank
have
you.
gathered here today too.
And also, I feel like one of the things that you said in the past is when you've described your use of the word original, you also are referring to those original as close to source.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you. I would love, Myra, if you felt comfortable to answer that question of your role in Rooted in Ethics and why you think that's meaningful at this time.
There's no way to get around the idea of relationship and the reality of what that means and what we're being called to. I mean, Jyoti just spoke to that. It was in Ye's opening. Mindahi has spoken to it. It's about a return. It's about a return to recognition of who and what we are. We've been born into separation. And it's been, we've been in, it has defined who we are here. And the great fortune is that some peoples walking on the planet still have a part of the original instructions of which they seek to walk in each day. And that is, that's to me, one of the things that I find I'm really grateful for. Because for all of us, we have had it. And one of the ways we know that the separation is as deep as it is through language. And this loss of language has meant everything, because when you can name the flowers, name the characteristics of the world you live in, that larger body that is you can make those distinctions. That means you can see and you can hear when it speaks. And we were designed and born to be in relationship and to be able to communicate with life. We're participating in something that is, it's most grand. And in our current state as human beings, we're missing out. We're missing out in our innate capacity to thrive in a living universe that has been designed for us to be here whole. And so in my role that you invited me into, Suzi, and that I could say yes to because of who you are and what you embody, has been around the contribution of restoring one small capital letter in the English word nature, to change it from being common to what it once had been in English, capitalized and considered to be sacred. Sacred. And, even the word primitive is a word that means close to source, close to the original. And we've lost the etymology and the meaning of words. And this is something I feel very passionate about. So I want to, for all of you in the audience, take the time to read the framework, the guidebook. Thank you for allowing me to make that offering and to be a reader. Because in being a reader, we also had a very important listening session with Jyoti Ma. And, you know, I just really feel that when we take the time and we're listening to our ancestors and to the source of life, that which honors life is the signature I'm always looking for. That when we do that, things can be born well. And so I really do feel like today we're acknowledging a process that has allowed this to be born well. And boy, do I love being a part of that. Thank you.
Thank you as well. And Luisah, your role
Yes,
in
I would
Rooted in
like to
Ethics
pick
and
up
in
on
relation. Go
where
on, do.
Myra has taken us, because it's definitely a place where I am working to define primal life people. Who are primal life people? How do primal life people live? How does one throw off the barrenness and separation of colonialism that has separated us from ourselves, each other, and nature? How do we heal from that, right? How do we create a new culture that has the best of what our ancestors had? And how do we bring that forward to create a better world today? We have to have in-depth conversations that come not only from the head, but from the heart and from our relationship with nature. And how do we apply that energy toward healing certain problems? One of the ancestors who I revere quite a bit is Wangari Maathai, you know, and the way that she used tree planting to organize the women to stare down the oppressors. It is very, very, very important that no more work be done without the input of primal life people. We cannot create from barrenness anymore. And so I am very, very encouraged by this conversation, by the existence of Tree Sisters, and the wonderful global collaborations that are coming about. It is so good to know that we are waking up. We are waking up.
Well, thank you. And no pressure, Angela. But follow that. What was your role in Rooted in Ethics? And I know that also encompasses other people that you're working with, like Lorianne and Madeline. But what was your role in Rooted in Ethics? And it was actually considerable in terms of the practice guide. And how do you feel that it's important at this time?
Thanks, Suzi. So I have only come to Rooted in Ethics fairly recently. So I joined Tree Sisters a year ago. But as Suzi introduced me, I've been working in the environmental field for a long time, most of that time watching things get worse. And I was schooled in the Western ways, the predominant worldview around science and ecology. And then in my home in Aotearoa, New Zealand, was reschooled, working in Te Ao Māori and Mātauranga Māori, and maybe started to see what was missing from the work that we were trying to do. So when I was introduced to Rooted in Ethics, I saw something that might be able to build a bridge between those two spaces and bring people along that pathway to ensuring that they're listening to people at place and supporting them to do what they want to do, what they need to do from their wisdom and their knowledge. So my main role so far has been to look at that practical implementation and start to look at the bridge building and links that we can drive so that the model shifts and the resources shift and that they go to support the principles and practices that the framework provides us.
Thank
Kia ora.
you. Thank you. And also thank you, because really that's been an extensive process of working through the restoration strategy, through the sort of revisioning from so much input from the restoration partners and the different communities they're in contact with, and feeding that back into how Tree Sisters works and then into the practices guide. So it's a really significant contribution from the restoration team to ensuring that what we're putting forward is something that we've practically looked at and explored, and we know to have improved outcomes for both ecological systems and for communities and enriching their culture. So going round, I've got just a few other points that I'd like to draw out, and then we can open up the questions that hopefully people are sending to Tree Sisters, so that we can ask the panel. Jyoti, I wondered if you could just speak to why the listening process is so important. What is it about establishing those relationships that you feel has been important, particularly for the fountain?
Well, I can just share what it's taught us and how it's grown us. When we come out of a Western model, where we listen through our heads, we listen for the conceptual understanding so that we think we can then speak to one another and make sense of what we're both trying to say. I'm simplifying this. When you start to work and make relations with the elders, the first thing that you going into ceremony has taught myself and our community is that, you sit on your knees for 14 hours and you listen. You go into other kind of ceremonies and you sit there in a sacred way and you listen. You listen with your whole being, not just your head. And you allow your heart to open the intelligence of itself so that it can direct some of that listening. And as you do that, the relations you have with yourself, with your own culture, and with that which rooted culture, opens itself and reveals and restores a coding that lives in the DNA of every one of us. But when things got sliced in the late 1400s, when that cut between nature and us occurred, and we started moving with that cut off understanding of who we are as part of nature, then it moved in a colonized state and it made everything about commodity. And it pushed into space an attitude of extraction. And it moved us away from the dialogue with creation itself. And so as we come back and restore that place that was cut, as we begin to restore that relationship with self and source, as we begin to deeply listen with the whole body sense of listening, we enter into a world of nature. And that world with nature and with traditional ancestral wisdom is alive. It's radically alive, and it's always speaking, and it's always listening to us as well, you see. And that moves us out of that world of our Western making, which is about cause and effect. And it's very different universal laws in each of those worlds. So when we begin to realize that, then we can surrender our need to listen the way we've been trained by a culture that was cut from deep listening and deafened to the voice of Mother Earth herself. Now we're starting to restore that hearing, and we're deepening the root of who we are with our own ancestral line, so that we can stand here now connected and realize the interconnection of it all. And there is a power of moment and presence that then arrives, so we can truly, deeply listen.
Thank you so much. And it feels really important to reference Rebecca Lefton in what that listening turned out to be something that, is possible. I mean, was, initiated in some ways in lockdown and then done over calls and Zoom and in this sort of odd modern way. And it brings me on to some of the kind of key pieces that came out of that. And I'd like to ask Mindahi, so could you explain what you mean when you talk about biocultural protocols, and maybe what the barriers you found in bringing this understanding forwards into dialogues at an international level?
Thank you. Yes, these biocultural protocols are instruments now. As you know, the dispossession and colonization for many years and even centuries has produced the biocultural erosion, the loss of cultures and biodiversity. So now we need articulate community-determined values, procedures, and priorities to be stated in these instruments. And also in these instruments, we can find the rights and responsibilities under customary laws, state laws, and even international laws. Why is important the customary laws? Because the people who has been living in that community, in that territory, in that bioregion, they know what they have. They know the knowledge, the ancestral wisdom. So these instruments are really to engage with external actors such as governments, corporations, academics, and NGOs. Because most of the time you see that the plans are like very structural. They are designed in office, and they don't even ask to the people there because the concessions are given by nation states. Because of lack of acknowledgement of original nations and peoples and local communities as subjects of rights. So these biocultural protocols, especially the biocultural community protocols, are instruments that states clear terms and conditions to governments and other actors like researchers, companies, NGOs, and so on, how they can engage with local communities and original nations and peoples. For what? To access the territory and to access the traditional ecological knowledge and even the ancestral wisdom, because now we can see that it's not just the tangible, but it's also the intangible. What we have in the communities is very valuable. So we have found many barriers, but I'm just going to mention that the first one is that not all the local communities and original nations and peoples we have biocultural protocols. That's a barrier. So in many places around the world are being built these protocols because most of the protocols are using the traditional, the oral tradition. They are not written down. We need to write down them. And the other barrier is that even if there are these protocols in place, the governments, the companies, they don't want to observe these protocols. Or sometimes they sign, and as you know, the UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, states that any company, anyone who wants to access to the territory, they have to observe the free prior informed consent, at least But for us, it's a step forward, but it's not enough. We need to put in place these biocultural protocols. And I like to also to say that we have been working for many years at the UN level regarding the accessing to genetic resources and traditional knowledge. What has happened is that we have been taking away our collective rights regarding the accessing to genetic resources, because the providers can be any private land, or even the botanical gardens worldwide, the Tokyo, the Missouri Botanical Garden, and in Switzerland, everywhere. They have taken away seeds, not just seeds, but plants. And even we have a lot of cases that they have taken away and they have patented, not just the plants, but also the traditional knowledge. So that's why we need biocultural protocols to defend life, because this is not ours, just ours. We are defending life systems. We're defending the ecosystems. We are defending the rights of nature and the earth jurisprudence, because we are not the only ones, from the anthropocentric point of view, who we are to give rights to the other beings, but at least it's a step forwards, right? So, yeah, in the tangible case, the traditional ecological knowledge, yes, we are acknowledged to at least to ask for this free prior informed consent, but it's not enough. We don't want to be a source, just a source. We want to be a collaborator. We want to be partners to protect life. And so for that, we need for others to observe, listen, and then take responsibility. But that responsibility is all together. We are doing our work, protecting, they say 80% of biodiversity in the world. It's actually biocultural diversity, because it's the culture, it's the biodiversity, plants and minerals and all of that, but it's also the interconnection, because we don't see this separately. It's all together. So thank you so much for allowing me to share this. And we need that biocultural heritage be protected.
Thank you. And also, I'm sure anybody in the audience can get a sense of why it's such an extraordinary privilege and honor to work with Mindahi in the text, and that the opportunity for that to be actually put in terms of references to international documents and policies and legislation, and then also into working practices and what that means practically on the ground, which was so awesomely backed up by Myra. And so what I'd like to do is just quickly flick over to asking Myra, what do you think is important about this relationship between inherent rights of nature and groups supporting ecosystems and the strength of communities?
It's a process, really, when we talk about rights of nature, of our coming to an awareness, to waking up again to what already is. That we really are not able to divorce ourselves from what we belong to and what source is life. But we can certainly walk around very ignorant to what that means. And that's where we've been. We're not going to be conferring rights to nature. Nature exists, it's intrinsic. The realities that make up you and I are a part of those laws. We are within the body of the earth. It's interesting you mentioned the diplomat of the biosphere. The listening comes from a recognition of what is alive, what's living. And that's everything. And then it's, what is our place in it? And what are our responsibilities within that? And this is about a life way. And we're coming back into, I really do love the word rematriation, because everywhere I'm being, touched and moved and guided is showing me that part of what we also separated from was this very recognition of the feminine. We know that. The matrix, the matrices of life, the holder, the container, the womb, the action of that, which is strong upon the waters. And this is why, Jyoti Ma has been working for some time with the Kogi, the Tayuna themselves, have been doing this listening over time. And they have the language, they know the distinctions, they know the bodies of waters without having even gone and traveled to them. They listen. And I feel that there is a place for writing down what we've become aware of, because this is what we've become. We have to think it almost in order to become cognitively aware. So first, though, the feeling comes through the sentience, through the body. It's a felt sense that we embody. And when we have contact with something that is sacred, that we're having an experience of perhaps for the first time, we have to take time to be with it and allow it to open and unfold within us. And what human beings can do distinctly is to find words, to bring it into cognitive framework. And Mindahi's talking about here, in my view, some of the cognitive frameworks we can use to walk with that, because the oral traditions, I feel, are still valid and very much important. And yet, together, to work together, and this is it, to be in relationship together across all those cultures with different languages and different ways of expressing. If we can bring it in, think it, bring it into words, that cognition, we can find a way of communicating and of working out systems that are aligned with Earth systems and the living cosmos. This is really our work right now, because we know what we have come into cannot be sustained nor maintained. That's where we are. We're hitting the wall of that reality. And it's an invitation, because Mother's right here, and I trust this Mother. And, she's guiding us into going beyond and transcending the aberrated system we've been participating in. We're it. It's coming alive in us, in relationship, in a restoration of what we belong to. We will be able to find the words that express this connection, you see. So this part of the 5-year process has been a beginning of showing, how do we feel again the connection and bring it cognitively into a framework that we can share with one another and begin to work in that framing. So coherence, congruence, cohesion. The cohesion comes when the group gets it and embodies it. And let me tell you how quickly things can go when we get to that point. Very quickly.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I know that EAA has got some feelings of wanting to bring some stuff forwards, and I'm also aware that there's some incredible questions that have come through on the chat. And I think what we're going to have to say is that we've got those questions. I'm going to ask Georgina to speak to this at the end about how it is that people can, how it is that we can respond to some of those questions, because they're really, I'm just going to give you a few quick examples. Just so Jenny Rose asks, we're in a times of seeing such seeming urgency, and yet the shifts from separation paradigm to refinding through unity, through deep listening seems to be immense. How does Rooted in Ethics support building that bridge, and what are the next steps? Candice Quartermain asks, in a world where 80% of humanity is now residing in cities, how does one cultivate relationships to nature when there are so many that do not have access? And there's also some very practical questions coming through about seeing how, restoration professionals, how can they apply this in their work? And so I think we have, I've got this overwhelming desire to make sure that the two delegates that need to move on to another call are able to do so at past. So yeah, I'm really aware of that. So Luisah, knowing that, just to round up, I feel like you would like to bring something forward. And I also want to say that anybody who has any inquiries, particularly because Angela could be telling you a whole load of stuff for those that are coming in as restoration professionals in terms of supporting this work within organizations, please do write into learning@treesisters.org. We also have a feedback form on the Rooted in Ethics landing page, which means that people can give us feedback on Rooted in Ethics, and also potentially feed in some case studies of your own work or the stuff that you're exploring. And we will also be sending out an email after this recording with the recording and with opportunities for people to follow up on those questions. If you haven't had your questions answered, please do send them in, and that means that we can follow up on that with you all. But Luisah, I'm afraid for finishing words, we're not going to be able to go around everyone. And so I am really deeply, deeply grateful for all of your voices. And I'm just going to give the last word to Luisah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I just want to say that this conversation about the ethics of this work, it is very, very important that people of Africa and the African diaspora have a clear voice in shaping the policies and the practices that we develop. And this is because we come not only with an original love of the land and knowledge of the land that has been denied, but in a lot of places we were moved somewhere to land that was alien and came to love it, learned how to love it, okay? The ability to make that kind of adjustment and restoration is very, very important. I also want to say that we went through a period of dealing with the forest as a scary place, a place where lynchings occurred, a place where people were chased down and that sort of thing. We have been denied the 40 acres and a mule that was promised, okay? And that comes forward right up to today, where Black farmers are having difficulty maintaining their farms because there is an idea in the head of America and in a lot of the world that people with dark skin should be slaves. It is important that we make it clear that the new relationship to the earth is not slavery, is not ownership, is stewardship. It must be seen as stewardship, and it must penetrate the sadness and the danger and the alienation of the inner cities. It is not enough to just do the forest and do the farm. We have evidence that inner city violence is greatly diminished when trees are planted in the area where the violence has occurred. And so I am very, very much advocating that we re-inspirit through a connection to the land and to the trees everywhere that we are. Everywhere that we are. I have this other thing I have to do. I'll see if I can tune back in. This is a wonderful conversation, and I'm
Thank you.
grateful to be part of it.
Thank you for opening it and closing it. To both of the delegates that I know need to jump, please feel really welcome to go. Thank you to all of the panelists today, and also an incredible thanks to so many of the people in this audience who have massively and directly contributed towards this work. I shall hand over to Georgina.
Thank you so much, Suzi. I'm very conscious of the time, and again, apologies to everyone. Your questions sounded amazing, and I wish we had time for them, but there was just so much in the room to hear, and I'm so thankful for all of our panelists for sharing with us today. If you do need to jump off, if you're an attendee, I'm going to drop a shortened version of my spiel now in the chat, just in case you'd like to take that away with you. If you do have a couple of minutes just to stay on and I can close, that would be wonderful. So again, just a huge thank you to everyone for joining us today, to all of the panelists. We truly appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us, and it feels like such a privilege to be here listening and to be a part of this work. So thank you so much. Thank you to every attendee. We hope you have found today's session insightful and energizing. The chat is open, by the way, in case folks would like to put any notes in there. You're more than welcome to. We are so glad to have shared Rooted in Ethics with you now. And honestly, we are only at the beginning of what we are sure will be an exciting journey. We have so much more to come. And if you're interested in keeping up to date, please reach out to learning@treesisters.org and make sure you're signed up to the Tree Sisters mailing list. The link is on our website. You will receive, as Suzi said, an email with the recording and further resources in the coming week. You can also visit our websites to find out more about both Tree Sisters and The Fountain. Thank you to people popping those in chat as well. It should be easy to find for everyone. So now a call for your support. Both organisations need funding to continue our work, both separately and in collaboration. So if you enjoyed today's session and found value and you feel called to, please consider giving to either or both organisations to support our work. You can find details of how to donate on both of our websites. And together we have big plans for Rooted in Ethics and excited to co-create more resources to support the adoption of this framework. We're looking at specific materials tailored to certain needs and to specific audiences as well. So we're looking to expand the funding for communities working in this way as well. So if you think you might be able to support with either the application of the framework or funding communities working in this way, either financially or in some other partnership with us, please do reach out to learning@treesisters.org. Thank you again for your time here today. It means so much to be surrounded by others who care so much about Mother Earth. So thank you, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care, everyone.